The night sky above Earth was quiet, filled with stars that shimmered faintly. Aaron sat on the wooden porch of his small house at the edge of the town. His hands were rough, his face lined with years of work and memories he never spoke about. To his neighbors, he was only an old soldier who had retired long ago. But inside his mind, the images of war still lived, sharp and alive, as if they had happened yesterday. The war between humans and the Zorin had lasted for many years. Aaron had joined when he was young, full of fire, ready to protect his people. The Zorin were strange to human eyes. Their tall frames, scaled skin, and glowing eyes gave them an alien beauty, but also inspired fear. Both sides had lost much, and battles left the ground red with sacrifice. Yet Aaron carried one memory that stood apart from the rest, a moment that was unlike the killing and fire. It happened on a distant world, during the last days of the war. Aaron had been part of a squad sent to storm a ruined city where Zorin forces had hidden. Buildings were broken, walls torn, and smoke rose into the sky. The air smelled of fire and dust. Aaron had moved carefully, rifle in hand, searching the empty streets. His squad had scattered, each soldier hunting shadows among the ruins. Then he heard it. A sound, soft and pained, coming from beneath a fallen archway. Cautiously, he stepped closer, weapon ready. There, half buried under stone and metal, was a Zorin figure. Her body was wounded, scales broken, blood glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her chest rose with shallow breaths. When she saw him, her eyes widened, bright like gems, filled with both fear and dignity. Aaron stood frozen. He had been taught the Zorin were enemies, that showing mercy was weakness. But something in her gaze stopped him. She was not holding a weapon. She was trapped, struggling to breathe. For a long moment, soldier and alien stared at each other in silence. Then, against all reason, Aaron lowered his weapon. He pushed away the broken stones, his arms burning with effort. The alien gasped, surprised that a human would touch her without hate. Her voice was faint, speaking in a language he did not fully understand, but he caught the tone. It was not anger. It was wonder. Aaron lifted the heavy beam, enough for her to crawl free. She was weak, trembling, yet she nodded to him with a slow, graceful bow of her head. Her glowing eyes locked on his, and in them he saw something he never expected to see from an enemy: gratitude. Aaron did not stay. He could not. His squad was nearby, and if they found him with her, they would call him a traitor. He turned away quickly, leaving her to her fate. But as he left, he felt her eyes following him, burning into his memory. That single look remained in his heart far stronger than all the battles he had fought. Years passed. The war ended. Peace was written in heavy documents, though both sides carried scars that would never fade. Aaron returned to Earth, carrying medals that meant little to him. He worked in small jobs, moved to a quiet town, and lived alone. People sometimes asked him about the war, but he always gave short answers. He never spoke of the alien under the stone archway. That memory was his alone. Now, as he sat on his porch, the crickets singing in the dark, he thought once more of those glowing eyes. Why had he saved her? He could never explain it fully. Something inside him had whispered that life, even the life of an enemy, had value. That moment had changed him more than any order or medal ever could. Sometimes, he wondered if she had survived after he left. Perhaps she had died moments later. Perhaps other Zorin had found her and carried her to safety. Or maybe she had simply faded into the ruins, her last memory being the hand of a human who chose mercy over hate. Aaron would never know, yet he still thought of her. It was strange how a single act, lasting only a few minutes, could weigh so heavily on his life. The town around him had no idea. To them, he was just Aaron, the old soldier who kept to himself. They did not know that he carried the secret of saving an alien life. They did not know that every night, as the stars shone above, he wondered if somewhere out there, among those distant lights, the alien still remembered him. As the evening grew colder, Aaron leaned back in his chair. He listened to the quiet wind, the rustling trees, the soft hum of the night. For a moment, peace filled him, but deep inside, the past refused to rest. The battle, the ruins, the glowing eyes of the wounded queen, it all lived within him, waiting, as if the story was not yet finished. Aaron closed his eyes, but he knew sleep would not come easily. Memories rarely allowed him rest. And though he could not explain why, tonight he felt something unusual. A faint sense, deep in his bones, that the past was not done with him. The night was quiet, yet something strange stirred in the skies above Earth. In the town where Aaron lived, most people were asleep, unaware of what was happening. But far above the clouds, satellites orbiting the planet began to pick up signals. They were not human signals. They carried a rhythm, a pulse, like a voice from the stars trying to speak. In the capital, scientists studied the patterns with alarm. Governments called emergency meetings, fearing the return of the Zoran. The signals were repeated again and again, clear enough to be understood. There was no threat in them, no call to war. Instead, the message carried only one question: do you remember me, human? News spread quickly. People whispered in the streets, news channels played the strange words again and again. Many were afraid. Some thought it was a trick to weaken Earth before another invasion. Military leaders argued about defense and weapons. But to Aaron, sitting in his small house, the message pierced deeper than fear. The words felt as though they were aimed directly at him. He sat in his chair, staring at the small radio on his table. Though it was old and simple, it still caught fragments of the broadcast. The moment he heard those words, his heart beat faster. He remembered the ruins, the fallen stones, and the alien with glowing eyes. He remembered how she had looked at him when he saved her life. And now, decades later, someone from the stars was asking that very question. It was too much to be coincidence. For 2 nights he could not sleep. He walked around his home, restless, torn between silence and truth. If he spoke, if he told someone about that memory, they might laugh at him or call him a liar. But the message would not let him rest. He knew in his soul it was meant for him. Soon, military officers came to his town. They visited all veterans who had fought in the war, asking if any of them had connections with the Zoran. Most soldiers shook their heads, puzzled and suspicious. But when they came to Aaron, he sat quietly, eyes fixed on the table, before he finally spoke. "I think the message is for me," he said in a low voice. The officers looked at each other, confused. One asked, "What do you mean, old man?" Aaron explained slowly. He told them about the ruined city, about finding the wounded Zoran, about the choice he made. His voice shook as he spoke, for it was the first time he had ever shared the secret. The officers listened in silence, some doubtful, others curious. When he finished, the room was heavy with thought. "You are saying you saved one of them?" an officer asked sharply. "Why?" Aaron only answered, "Because it was the right thing to do." The officers left, but the story spread quickly to higher command. Some dismissed him as a tired old veteran making up tales. But others remembered the exact wording of the signal. "Do you remember me, human?" It was personal. It did not sound like a challenge to Earth. It sounded like a call to a single person. Within days, Aaron was summoned to the capital. He traveled by train, staring out at the passing fields, wondering how his quiet life had suddenly been broken. When he arrived, he was taken to a secure hall where scientists, diplomats, and generals waited. On a great screen, the signal played again, glowing letters forming the question. All eyes turned to him. "Do you believe this is meant for you?" the general asked. Aaron nodded. Yes. The hall filled with murmurs. Some argued it was too dangerous to trust him. Others whispered that if the Queen of the Zoran still lived, this might change everything. Aaron stood calmly, though his heart raced. He never wanted attention, never asked for honors. Yet here he was, standing before leaders as if fate had pulled him back into the war he had left behind. The scientists worked for days, sending replies, but the alien signal ignored them. Only when Aaron spoke directly into the transmitter, his voice simple and steady, did the signal change. He said only one line, "Yes, I remember." The hall went silent as the screens flickered. Then new words appeared, brighter, clearer. "You saved my life. I am Queen Vera of the Zoran. I must see you again." The room erupted with noise. Generals demanded caution. Some wanted to refuse the meeting, fearing it was a trap. But others whispered that this was a chance for peace greater than any treaty. The Queen of the Zoran herself was asking for a meeting with a single human soldier. Aaron stood quietly through it all. His mind returned to the ruins, to the moment when he had lifted the stone and set her free. He had never known she was a queen. He had never thought such a simple choice would one day shake the world. But here it was. She remembered him, and she was reaching out across the stars. Finally, the leaders turned to him again. "Will you speak to her? Will you go, if she asks?" Aaron looked at them, then at the glowing screen. His voice was calm. "Yes. If she is reaching out, then I will answer." The decision sent ripples across the planet. Some feared it. Some celebrated it. But for Aaron, it felt less like a choice and more like destiny. He had carried the memory for so long, never knowing if it mattered. Now, the stars themselves had spoken back. The Queen had not forgotten. The signal between Earth and the Zoran flagship grew stronger each passing day. Scientists listened to the voice that crossed the stars, and diplomats argued over every word. But to Aaron, the voice was not strange. It was familiar, even though he had only heard it once, in a ruined city long ago. It was the voice of the alien whose life he had saved. Now she spoke again, not as a wounded soldier, but as Queen Vera of the Zoran. The announcement of her identity shook the world. Many leaders doubted it at first. Could it truly be the Queen herself? Why would she call for one old soldier instead of addressing Earth's government? Yet each time she sent a message, her words carried calm authority, and her knowledge of the past proved she was no impostor. She remembered the smallest detail: the fallen stones, the silent stare, the choice that had spared her life. These were things only the two of them could know. For days, the debate continued. Some leaders believed it was a chance for lasting peace. Others thought it was a trap meant to weaken human defenses. Generals argued for caution, but Vera's messages never contained threats. She did not demand surrender, nor did she speak of war. She asked only for one thing: to meet the human who had once shown mercy. Finally, Earth's council agreed. Aaron would speak with her directly, face to face, through a secure channel. When the day came, Aaron stood in a large hall surrounded by screens, cameras, and officials. He wore no uniform, only simple clothes, but the weight of the moment pressed on his shoulders. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered, and then her image appeared. The Queen of the Zoran filled the screen. Her tall form was clad in flowing silver garments that shimmered like water. Her scaled skin glowed softly under strange light, and her eyes burned like living jewels. Yet there was no cruelty in her gaze. Instead, there was calm, wisdom, and a deep memory of what had been. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "Human," she said, her words translated by the machine, "do you remember the ruins of Varus, where one soldier chose mercy over death?" Aaron's throat tightened, but he forced himself to answer. "I remember." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the great hall fell silent. Leaders, generals, and scientists all stared at the screen, but it felt as though only two beings truly existed in that moment: the Queen and the soldier. "You lifted the stones from my body when all reason told you not to," she continued. "You turned away without claiming my life, though war demanded it. That act changed me. I was not yet queen then, only heir to the throne, hidden in battle. Because of you, I lived. And because of you, I later chose peace." Her words rippled across the room. Aaron stood in quiet surprise. He had never thought his choice mattered to anyone but himself. To hear that his action had shaped history felt like a weight heavier than any metal. "I am not here to speak of war," Vera said firmly. "I am here to honor a bond. One life was spared, and through it, countless others were saved. Now I wish to meet the one who made that choice. Not as enemies. Not as ruler and soldier. But as two lives joined by fate." The generals whispered urgently among themselves. Some feared her words were a trick to lower defenses. But others saw something deeper. A queen would not risk her pride or her throne for a simple trap. Her voice carried truth. She had not forgotten him. Aaron finally spoke again. His voice was rough but steady. "I never knew you were a queen. I only saw someone in pain. Anyone would have done the same." Vera's eyes glowed brighter, as though she was almost smiling. "No," she said. "Not anyone. I have seen war. I know how mercy dies in battle. But you held it in your hands. You gave it freely. That is why I remember." The hall grew silent again. For a long moment, there was no sound but the soft hum of the machines. Aaron felt the weight of her words pressing on him, but he did not turn away. Something inside him felt lighter, as if the years of silence he had carried were finally understood. Then Vera spoke once more, her voice low and certain. "I wish to meet you in person. My flagship will come near Earth, and you will be invited aboard as my guest. I give you my word no harm will come to you, and no harm will come to your people. I come not with armies, but with respect." The leaders of Earth were thrown into new arguments. Some cried out that it was dangerous, that it risked all of humanity. Others whispered that it could be the greatest chance for peace the galaxy had ever seen. Aaron listened quietly. He knew the choice would not be his alone, yet deep inside, he already knew his answer. After long hours, the council finally agreed. They would allow the Queen's flagship to enter orbit under strict watch. Aaron would go aboard as an envoy. The decision spread across the world, stirring both fear and hope. Crowds gathered in cities, debating whether the alien queen was friend or foe. But through all the noise, Aaron remained calm. For him, the meeting was not about politics. It was about a memory, a bond born in ruins, and a promise of peace. That night, he sat again on his porch, looking at the stars. He thought of the ruins, the dust, the glowing eyes. He thought of the life he had saved and how it had returned to find him after so many years. He was no hero in his own mind. He was just a man who made a choice. Yet that choice had reached across the galaxy, bringing a queen to his door. As the stars shone above, Aaron felt the weight of the coming days. Soon, he would step aboard a ship not of this world. Soon, he would face the queen whose life he had once saved. The future was uncertain, but he no longer felt fear. Instead, he felt a strange calm. Perhaps fate had been waiting all this time for their paths to meet again. The day finally came when the Zoran flagship appeared above Earth. People across the planet watched the skies with fear and wonder. It was unlike any human ship. The vessel shimmered like liquid metal, its long curved body glowing faintly as if alive. Instead of sharp edges, it looked grown, almost like a creature from the deep sea that had taken flight among the stars. Governments had prepared for the moment. Fleets of human ships circled in orbit, their weapons ready, though none dared to fire. The Queen had promised peace, and her ship showed no signs of attack. Slowly, the great vessel moved into a steady orbit, shining above Earth like a second moon. Aaron was flown to the capital spaceport under strict escort. Soldiers and officials walked with him, but he felt calm. In his heart, he knew the Queen's words were true. She had no need to set a trap for one old soldier. She had come because of memory, because of gratitude, because of a bond no war could erase. At the spaceport, he was dressed in a simple suit, not military, not ceremonial. He had asked for that. He did not want to appear as a warrior or a politician. He wanted to stand as himself, only Aaron, the man who had once lifted stones from a fallen stranger. A small shuttle descended from the Zoran flagship. Its surface glowed like crystal, shifting colors with each angle of light. When the door opened, two Zoran envoys stepped out. They were tall, their scaled skin shining softly, their eyes glowing like stars. Yet their movements were slow and graceful, not threatening. They bowed deeply to Aaron, and the hall gasped at the gesture. To the Zoran, this human was more than a guest. He was honored. "Come," one envoy said through the translator. "The Queen awaits." Aaron stepped forward without hesitation. The soldiers and officials watched in silence as he entered the shuttle. For many, it was unthinkable that a human would walk so freely into an alien craft. But Aaron's steps were steady. He had carried the weight of the past too long to turn back now. The shuttle lifted smoothly into the sky. Earth grew smaller beneath him, until clouds and oceans were only patches of blue and white. Aaron pressed his hand against the window, gazing down. He had lived his entire life on that planet, never dreaming he would leave it. Now he was on his way to a ship that was not built by human hands, to meet a queen who had remembered him across the gulf of space. When the shuttle reached the flagship, the sight stunned him. The hull was covered with flowing patterns of light, like veins pulsing with energy. As the doors opened, Aaron stepped into a corridor unlike anything he had known. The walls curved smoothly, glowing faintly, as if the ship itself breathed. The air was fresh and warm, carrying a faint scent of flowers he had never smelled before. The envoys guided him forward. Others Zoran watched from a distance, their glowing eyes following him with silent respect. Whispers moved through the halls in their language, but the translator caught a few words. They were saying his name. They were calling him the human who saved the queen. Aaron felt no pride, only a quiet weight. He had never asked for honor. Yet here, among an alien people, he was seen not as a soldier, but as someone who had given life instead of taking it. That thought humbled him deeply. At last, the envoys led him into a great chamber. Its ceiling arched high above, filled with soft light like a night sky filled with stars. In the center stood a throne made not of stone or metal, but of living crystal that pulsed with gentle light. And upon it sat Queen Vera. She rose as he entered, tall and radiant, her silver garments flowing like water. Her eyes met his, glowing with recognition. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. Then she stepped down from her throne and walked toward him. "Aaron," she said, his name spoken in her deep, melodic voice. "At last, we meet not among ruins, but under peace." Aaron bowed his head slightly, not in fear, but in respect. "I never thought this day would come," he said softly. Vera studied him closely. "You have aged, as humans do. Yet your spirit is unchanged. I see the same eyes that looked upon me when I was broken and weak." Her words carried both power and warmth. Around them, the Zoran guards and advisors watched silently, as if witnessing a moment of history. "You honor me too much," Aaron replied. "I only did what anyone should have done." The queen tilted her head gently. "Do not lessen your choice. Many would have left me to die. You did not. That choice shaped the course of my people. It gave me strength to seek peace when I took the throne. Without you, countless more would have perished in war." The chamber fell quiet. The weight of her words spread through all who listened. Aaron felt it too, heavy on his heart, but also strangely freeing. The secret he had carried for so long was no longer his alone. It was known, remembered, honored. The queen raised her hand, and the crystal walls shifted. Images appeared, scenes of Zoran cities rebuilt after the war, families living in peace, children playing under glowing skies. "This is what your choice protected," she said. "This is the legacy of mercy." Aaron looked at the images, his chest tight with emotion. For the first time in many years, he felt that his life had meaning beyond battles and silence. He had not just survived the war. He had helped end it. The queen stepped closer. Her voice softened. "You came to me as a stranger, and you gave me life. Now you come as a guest, and I give you my trust. From this day, the bond between our people begins with you." Aaron met her gaze, and though their worlds were different, he felt a connection deeper than words. It was not the bond of ruler and subject, nor of warrior and queen. It was the bond of two beings who had once faced death together, and chosen life instead. For the first time since the war, Aaron felt a sense of peace inside himself. He was no longer just a forgotten soldier. He was part of something greater, something that reached beyond Earth, beyond war, into the stars themselves. For a time, Aaron lived among the Zoran as a guest of honor. The queen herself guided him through her world inside the flagship. He saw vast halls where crystal towers rose like living trees, glowing gardens where light drifted like mist, and schools where young Zoran studied peace as seriously as they once studied war. Everywhere he walked, whispers followed him. To them, he was not just a visitor. He was the human who had saved their queen, the one whose choice had changed history. Yet not all eyes that followed him were friendly. Beneath the surface of respect, shadows stirred. Among the Zoran were those who still held bitterness toward humans. They remembered the destruction of the war, the loss of cities, the countless dead. To them, peace was weakness, and the queen's friendship with a human was betrayal. One evening, Aaron walked with the queen through a long corridor that opened into a balcony. From there, the stars spread across the void, shining brighter than he had ever seen from Earth. Vera stood beside him, her tall figure framed by the light. "Do you see?" she asked softly. "When I was young, I thought the stars were only fields of war. But now, I see them as bridges. Worlds waiting to be joined, not conquered." Aaron nodded slowly. "On Earth, we look up at the stars and dream. But few believe we can ever touch them. You already live among them. Perhaps that is why our fears are stronger." The queen studied him carefully. "Do you fear me, Aaron?" He shook his head. "I do not fear you. I fear those who still carry hate." Her eyes grew dim for a moment, as if a shadow passed across them. "Yes," she said, "there are those who would rather see me fall than see peace continue. They whisper in the dark, waiting for their chance." Aaron turned to her. "Then you are in danger." She gave a faint smile. "I have always been in danger. But now that you are here, their hatred burns brighter. They see you as proof of my weakness. They will not rest." Aaron felt a heaviness settle on him. He had not come to be a hero, but fate had brought him into the center of their struggle once again. He thought back to the war, to the ruins where he had once saved her. History, it seemed, was repeating itself. Later that night, as he rested in the chamber given to him, he heard a faint sound beyond the walls. Voices whispered in the Zoran tongue. Though he did not understand the words, the tone was sharp and urgent. He stepped closer to the doorway and listened. Two figures passed, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim corridor. Their faces were hard, their movements tense. The translator device whispered a broken piece of their speech: the queen, the human, weakness. Then they were gone. Aaron lay awake for hours. He knew enough of war to sense when danger was close. He had seen the way some Zoran looked at him, their eyes cold, their respect only for show. They would not allow peace to continue without a fight. The next day, he spoke to Vera. "There are those among your people who plot against you," he said. She did not look surprised. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Yes. I know of them. They are warlords who rose during the conflict. Peace stripped them of their power. They wish to take it back. Then they will strike soon," Aaron warned. Vera's eyes glowed with determination. "Let them come. I am not afraid. But I will not let their hatred shape the future. If they act, we will answer not with fear, but with unity." Her courage stirred something inside Aaron. She was no longer the wounded figure trapped beneath stone. She was a queen who stood tall against shadows. Yet he also knew that even queens could fall if betrayal struck from within. That evening, a great ceremony was held aboard the flagship. It was meant to honor the bond between humans and Zoran. Leaders from Earth were present, connected through secure channels. Zoran elders gathered in long rows, their crystal garments shimmering in the glow of the hall. At the center, Queen Vera stood with Aaron beside her. The air was heavy with history. For the first time since the war, human and Zoran stood together in peace. Aaron felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him, both hopeful and doubtful. Vera raised her voice, clear and strong. "Here stands Aaron of Earth, the one who chose mercy when war demanded hate. His choice gave me life, and through that life, I chose peace. Let this bond be the seed of a new future." The hall echoed with voices, some in agreement, others in silence. Aaron glanced around. Among the crowd, he saw faces bright with hope. But he also saw eyes that burned with hidden anger. And then it happened. From the shadows of the hall, a group of Zoran warriors stepped forward. Their armor gleamed darkly, their weapons sharp with light. Gasps filled the chamber as they moved quickly toward the queen. "For too long you have shamed our people," one of them shouted. "You bow to a human, you call it peace, but we call it weakness. Tonight, your rule ends." Chaos erupted. Guards rushed to protect the queen, but the rebels struck with speed. Aaron's instincts came alive. Though years had aged him, the soldier in him had never truly died. He grabbed a fallen staff from one of the guards and moved forward. "Stay behind the queen," he shouted, his voice strong despite the years. Zoran guards rallied, forming a shield around Vera. Aaron fought beside them, his movements slower than in youth but guided by sharp memory and will. The rebels pressed hard, shouting that the queen had betrayed their race, but the defenders stood firm. In the clash of light and steel, Aaron's heart pounded with a single truth. Once again, the queen's life hung in balance. Once again, fate had placed him in her path. He would not let history end differently this time. The rebels fell back for a moment, regrouping. Their leader glared at Aaron with burning eyes. "You," he snarled. "The human. This is your fault. If not for you, she would have died long ago. You should never have interfered." Aaron stood tall, gripping the staff. "If saving a life is a crime, then I will answer for it. But you will not harm her." The hall trembled with the force of the confrontation. The shadows of the past had risen once more, and the future of peace now hung on a knife's edge. The hall shook with cries as the rebels surged forward once more. Their blades of light clashed with the shields of the royal guards, sending sparks into the air. The once celebratory chamber now echoed with the roar of battle. Aaron stood in the middle of it, gripping the staff like a weapon. His body was older, slower, but his spirit was sharp as steel. Queen Vera remained behind the shield wall of her loyal guards. Her glowing eyes followed the chaos, steady but heavy with concern. She did not scream or flee. She stood tall, her figure shining against the storm of violence. To many, she looked like a pillar of strength, But Aaron could see the danger. He knew that if the rebels broke through, her life would end. The rebel leader raised his weapon high and shouted across the hall. Zoran, do not bow to humans. Zoran, do not serve weakness. Tonight, the queen falls, and with her, the shame she brought upon us. His words sparked the fury of his fighters. They threw themselves against the guards with renewed force. The shield wall shook, and gaps began to appear. Aaron felt the line breaking. He stepped forward, planting himself beside the guards, his staff raised. Hold the line, he shouted. The guards glanced at him. Some seemed doubtful, but others drew strength from his presence. They remembered the story of this human, the one who had once saved their queen. If he was willing to stand in battle for her again, then they could not falter. The rebels pushed hard, and soon Aaron faced one directly. The warrior's glowing eyes burned with hate as his blade slashed down. Aaron blocked with the staff, the impact rattling his arms. He staggered but did not fall. With a swift strike, he swung the staff into the rebel's side, knocking him back. The old soldier's body ached with each movement, but his heart drove him forward. He had lived in silence for years, carrying the memory of one choice. Now, that memory had brought him here. He would not let it end with failure. Beside him, the guards roared and fought with greater strength. The rebels began to slow, surprised by the resistance. But their leader pressed on, his fury unshaken. You think an old human can change fate, the leader spat. You think mercy gives strength. Mercy is weakness. Mercy destroys us. Aaron's voice rose above the clash. Mercy saves us. Mercy gives us a future. That is why your queen still stands. That is why you fear her. The words cut deeper than the staff in his hands. The rebels shouted in rage, but some in the hall hesitated. Even in the heat of battle, Aaron's voice carried a truth that could not be ignored. The rebel leader roared and charged, forcing his way past two guards. His weapon rose high, aimed at the queen. Aaron's heart jolted. Without thinking, he leapt forward, blocking the path. The blade slashed across his staff, splitting it, and the force knocked him to one knee. Pain shot through his arms, but he held firm. Stay behind me, he shouted to the queen. The rebel snarled. You should have let her die in the ruins. You should have let fate take her. Aaron rose slowly, gripping the broken staff like two clubs. His eyes burned with fire. I will never regret saving her. If it means standing here again, then so be it. The rebel lunged, but Aaron struck first. With a swing of one half of the staff, he knocked the blade aside. With the other, he struck the rebel hard in the chest. The leader stumbled, and before he could recover, the queen's guards rushed in. They pinned him to the ground, their weapons holding him still. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the heavy breaths of those who had fought. The remaining rebels, seeing their leader captured, hesitated. Some dropped their weapons. Others fled into the shadows. Slowly, the storm of battle ended, leaving only the wreckage of shattered crystal and broken pride. Aaron stood still, breathing heavily. His arms shook, his chest ached, but he remained on his feet. The queen stepped forward, her presence calm yet powerful. She looked at the fallen rebel leader, then at Aaron. You saved me once in the ruins, she said softly. Now, you have saved me again before my people. Aaron lowered the broken staff. His voice was tired but steady. Because life is worth saving. Always. Her glowing eyes held his for a long moment. Around them, the guards and elders bowed their heads. The hall was no longer filled with fear. It was filled with a deep, quiet respect. The queen raised her voice so all could hear. Let it be known that peace is not weakness. Peace is strength greater than war. This human showed mercy when hate ruled the stars. Tonight, he showed courage when shadows rose again. Let his choice be our guide. The guards struck their staffs against the floor in unison, the sound echoing through the hall like thunder. Even some who had doubted her bowed their heads, unable to deny the truth before them. The rebel leader was dragged away, his fury silent now. The threat had not vanished completely, but the rebellion had been broken. And in the center of it all stood an old human who had once been forgotten, now remembered by all. Later, as the hall was cleared, the queen spoke to Aaron in private. Why do you keep saving me, even now, when you owe me nothing? Aaron looked at her, his face lined with age but his eyes steady. Because when I saw you in the ruins, I saw not an enemy, but a life. That has never changed. If I had the choice again, I would always make the same one. The queen bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep honor among her people. Then know this, Aaron of Earth. From this day forward, your name will live among the Zorin. You are no longer just a soldier of humanity. You are a guardian of peace. Aaron said nothing more. He only looked out at the stars through the crystal walls. For the first time in many years, he felt not the weight of war, but the strength of loyalty, both given and received. The great hall had been repaired over many days. The broken crystal walls now shone once again with silver light. Yet something deeper had been repaired too. The people of Zorin no longer looked at their queen with doubt, but with a new trust. And beside her, a human stood, his presence reminding them of the path they had almost lost. Aaron walked slowly through the city one morning, watching the life around him. The tall spires glittered under the light of two suns, and the air was filled with the hum of energy lines that ran through the streets. The people did not whisper against him anymore. Instead, they greeted him with respectful nods, some even placing their hands over their hearts, a sign of thanks. He was still just one man, old and scarred, but here, among the Zorin, he had become more. He had become a living proof that peace was stronger than hate. The queen had called a gathering in the plaza, the largest in the city. Countless Zorin stood together, their eyes bright, waiting for her words. Aaron stood at her side, though he had not wished for such attention. Queen Vera raised her voice so all could hear. Long ago, when war ruled the stars, a human saved me. That act of mercy began a new path for our people. And though shadows rose again, he stood by me once more. Let the stars remember that no wall of blood or fear can stop peace when courage guides it. The crowd struck their staffs against the stone ground, the deep sound rolling like thunder. Aaron looked out and saw something rare hope in their eyes. When the voices quieted, the queen turned to him. Speak to them, Aaron. They should hear you. Aaron shook his head slightly. He had never been a speaker, only a soldier. But the queen's gaze was steady, and he could not refuse her. Slowly, he stepped forward. I am no leader, he began, his voice low but clear. I am no hero. I was only a man who chose not to kill when the chance was given. That choice did not end war. It did not make me stronger. But it gave me peace in my heart. Today, you have seen that mercy is not weakness. Mercy is the seed of the future. And if humans and Zorin can share that seed, then the stars will not see us as enemies, but as builders of tomorrow. The plaza was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, voices rose, not in anger, but in unity. It was a sound Aaron had never heard in war. It was the sound of a people choosing a different path. After the gathering, the queen walked with him through the quiet gardens behind the palace. The flowers glowed softly, lit by the crystal roots that ran beneath the soil. She walked with grace, but her words were gentle. You speak of peace as if it is your only weapon, she said. Aaron gave a faint smile. It is the only weapon that does not destroy the one who carries it. She looked at him, her glowing eyes softer now. And yet you still fight when the moment calls. He nodded. Peace does not mean silence. Sometimes, it means standing firm against those who would burn it away. They walked further, past a fountain that sang with clear water. The queen stopped and faced him. Aaron, will you return to your world now, or will you remain here? The question weighed heavy in the air. He thought of Earth, far away, perhaps changed, perhaps forgotten. He thought of his quiet home where he had lived in shadows. But then he looked around at the crystal spires, at the Zoran who now greeted him with trust, at the queen whose life he had twice saved. I came here as a stranger, he said at last. I thought my story was finished. But now I see it is not. If you will have me, I will stay. Not as a ruler, not as a fighter, but as a friend of your people. The queen's voice was warm. Then you will never stand alone. From this day, human and Zoran shall share more than history. We shall share a bond. Word of his choice spread quickly. To the people, it was more than news. It was a sign that their queen's vision was true. The human who had once saved her in silence now stood as a bridge between worlds. In the weeks that followed, Aaron worked alongside the council to guide new paths. Trade began to flow between Zoran and distant colonies, not in secret, but with open hands. Soldiers who once trained for war now trained to protect travelers and builders. And though some voices of doubt still lingered, they no longer had the strength to divide the people. At night, Aaron often stood on the balcony of the palace, looking at the stars. He thought of the battles he had fought, the lives he had seen lost, the pain he had carried for so long. But he also thought of the queen's words, of the people's voices in the plaza, of the future that was now unfolding. One evening, Queen Vera joined him on the balcony. They stood together in silence for a time. Finally, she spoke. Do you wonder what the stars will think of us in centuries to come? Aaron smiled faintly. I do not wonder. I only hope they remember that once, in the middle of war, a human saved a queen, and that choice changed everything. The queen's glowing eyes turned toward him, steady and kind. They will remember. Because from this moment, peace has a story. And stories live longer than battles. The two of them stood side by side as the twin suns sank below the horizon, casting the city in gold and silver light. The people of Zoran walked freely beneath the towers, their voices rising not in fear, but in laughter. And among them lived a human whose name would not be forgotten, a man who had chosen mercy over hate, and in doing so, had given birth to a bond between worlds. For the first time in many years, Aaron felt no weight on his shoulders. He did not feel like a soldier anymore. He felt like a man who had found his place. The story of Aaron and Queen Vera did not end with war. It began with peace.